Hello guys and welcome back to I Read a Little. I have an apology to make because I've been really bad with my uploading. I don't think I've uploaded my March wrap up, which is really bad. Basically in... what is going on with my shirt? Basically in... when did I go? End of April I went on my first practice placement for university. So I'm in a different location. I live about an hour and a half away from where my practice placement is. So I haven't been able to record videos because I took literally the bare minimum with me because I moved up there to live for the 7-week duration that I'm on placement. And I just haven't had chance to read, I haven't had chance to record, I literally have had chance to do nothing apart from work for free because obviously you're doing a 9-to-5 job basically for free while you're on placement. So if I look like I'm dying, that's probably why. I had to put my mum's makeup on because I've left all my makeup in where I'm doing my practice placement, so I probably look a bit weird. I went walking yesterday and got absolutely sunburned, you probably can't see on my arm, but that is so how even, where's that come from? I don't even know. Anyway, it's so sore. My feet are covered in blisters. So yeah, this is going to be my April wrap up, and I have recorded my March wrap up, but unfortunately I didn't take my equipment with me on placement to do that stuff and put it up, so I haven't published it yet. So hopefully that'll be up shortly after this, or maybe before this. So you're gonna get 2 wrap ups in the space of a couple of days. So you're just gonna have to deal with that. So yeah, I read 10 books in April. I wanted to read quite a few because it was just before I was going on placement, so I thought we'll try and bash a few out before I go on placement, because I know that I'm not going to be able to read on placement hardly. I've read it's 7th of May now, and I've only read 1 book, which is bad for me. I normally read quite quickly. So so let's see. Yeah, 10 books I read. I've got my little stats here. How many 5 stars did I read? 1, 2... I read 3 5-star books, which is really good for me because I'm quite a critical rater. I hardly ever give 5-star books. 1, 2, 3, 4. I read 4 4-star books. No, 5 4-star books. 1 3.5-star book and 1 2-star book. I think that's right. I don't think I've missed any. And unfortunately most of the books, in fact all of the books that I read that month, were either library copies or Kindle ebooks. So I'll be putting a lot of pictures of the covers up here because I don't have a physical copy of them. So I'm just going to get straight into it. Let's get started. Let's just get straight into it, guys. I'm going to order it by star rating, so we'll do the lowest star to then the 5-star books, because I think that's just easier. So I'll start with the lowest rated book, which I gave 2 stars. Really surprising, I'm really surprised by this, and that was The Dead Fathers Club by Matt Haig. I'll put a little screenshot up here. I'm really into Matt Haig recently. I've read I read one of his books, what was it? How to Stop Time, I think it was called, and I rated that really highly. I think I gave it 4 stars, so I thought, I was oh, I want to Matt Haig hype, I'm going to read loads of Matt Haig books. So I read The Dead Fathers Club because I think it's a new release and it was just on my Libby app, which if you don't have it you should get it. Libby, it's an app for your library, so you can get books out of your library as ebooks. Really good app. And I just didn't like it. It was so weird. So basically the premise of it was that, I don't really want to give too much of a spoiler. I don't know how much is revealed on the blurb. It's about a young boy who, whose father has died in an accident, and it turns out that he can see his father as a ghost, and it's kind of about what his father wants him to do so that he can pass on, kind of thing, that sort of thing. That's the premise of the story anyway. And I recall when I read the blurb, I took it to be that the story was going to be different from the way the story actually was. I was kind of oh, this is interesting. It kind of reminds me of is it Terry Pratchett or Neil Gaiman who does that book about the boy in the graveyard who like can see ghosts and stuff. I think it's Neil Gaiman, and I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be like that sort of story. Like Johnny and the Bomb, I think, was a book where you could like he could see ghosts. And I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be really good, blah, blah, blah. And like, it did not go down the road that I thought it would go down. The ending was really disappointing. I didn't know like what I was meant to take away from the story. Like, it ended and I was like, I don't get it. Like, I don't get what point you were trying to make. I did not get it. It was really quite dark, and I can't really explain why without giving away the story. But let's just say it didn't go down. It was a very dark story. It wasn't like light and fluffy, that's for sure. And I didn't find it humorous. It was very dark and serious. And it did not go down the road that I thought it would. And all of Matt Haig's books that I've read so far have been like kind of humorous or fluffy. Like How to Stop Time was kind of like a love story. You know, that was quite cute. The Humans was kind of like a more meaningful tale, and it didn't have a sad or a happy ending. It just kind of had a like, you know, take from it as you will ending. And this book just, I did not get it. So yeah, I only gave it 2 stars, which I'm really disappointed about, because Matt Haig so far I really enjoyed his books, and that one just like, I don't know, maybe he was like trying to send a message out that I don't understand it. I'm just completely missing the plot. I don't know, let me know if you've read that book, if you thought the same thing as me. So yeah, next book that I read, I gave 3.5 stars. Some of these books, I must say, some of these books I was meant to read for April Maximus's April Readathon challenge, and because of all the shit that was going on placement, I've also got hay fever, so my eyes are like, oh. Because I was going on placement, I just, like, my reading went to shit, and actually I got into a really bad reading slump in April. I can't remember what book got me out of it, but yeah, I just was in a really bad slump for ages, and I read the majority of these books in the last week of like April. So yeah, but anyway, the next book that I read, which was part of that challenge, was Neil Shusterman's Scythe, which I'll put a picture up here. And basically that book is about we've basically evolved to the point where we don't die anymore, we just kind of live forever, and they have to create this organisation of scythes who go around policing the population, so they will choose who to kill off to kind of manage the population. And it's very complicated because it gets to a point where you can rewind your clock, so you live forever, but you can be like any age. So if you decide to live to 100, you can then like go back to like your 20s. So it's quite political in how they choose like who they're going to kill off and how it all works. And the story itself, as it turned out, was quite political about the whole organisation of the scythe. So basically what happens is it's about one particular scythe who decides to mentor someone into becoming a scythe themselves, and what happens as a result of that. And that's how you learn a bit more about like the organisation. I don't think that's really spoilery because it's kind of like, you know, something like that has to happen for there to be a premise to the plot. First of all, I rated this really high. I think I rated it 4 stars, and then when I thought about it a bit more, I was kind of like, I didn't actually enjoy it that much. Like, I found it a bit of a struggle to read, and I kind of like, I don't know if that was because I was in a bit of a reading slump or whether it was the writing, but there were certain pairings in the story that I didn't agree with. Like, it's the classic like state of like, we have to have a love story, so we're going to pair 2 people together who actually probably don't have any chemistry, and it like happens all of a sudden and you don't really see it like the match, which is what I felt. And I don't know, it's the age-old trap of like, why do you have to pair people up into a romance when you've got like a book already that has like actually quite a good premise, and you probably don't need to do that. And I just didn't feel that, and like it took up random parts of the book. There'd be like a random reference to like feelings of a couple paired together that I didn't pair them. I was just like, oh no, I don't see this happening. So yeah, that's kind of why I decided to rate it lower. And there were times when I found the book quite boring. Like, there's there are some like action moments where you're like, oh yeah, this is exciting, but there are equally a lot of like conferences where they're talking political shit and you're just like, this is boring, I don't really enjoy it. But that's just me. Some people might really enjoy that aspect of the book, but that's why I decided to just not like knock it down to 3.5. The next lot of books that I'm going to talk about are my 4-star books, of which I read 5, I think. So the one I'm going to talk about first is a book called Strange Weather in Tokyo by, who wrote it? Hiromi Kawakami. And it's a bit of an out there book actually. I find that every time I read sort of Asian literature, I'll put a picture here. I think that's Japanese, might be Japanese. They're a bit like weird, like you take from them what you will, and they're kind of like slice of life type stories where you're just looking at a moment in someone's life that might to you seem quite meaningless, but you just have to try and like take a message from it of what they would be seeing their life like at that time, if that makes sense. It's kind of like a read between the lines kind of story. So this book in particular follows a woman who I think now is in like her 40s, and she goes to a bar and sees one of her old teachers who must be in like his 60s or 70s now, I'm not sure. And it follows the story about how they reconnect and the sort of friendship that forms as a result of their reconnection and the relationship that forms. It's really interesting, and it just takes, there's a particular bar that they frequent and they will meet like at the end of the day and have like a little chat about life, and then it goes on and on about like trips they take and things like that and what happens as a result of this like rekindling of their friendship. I really enjoyed it. I can see why some people wouldn't enjoy it because the writing style can be very abrupt, and like certain chapters you thought, why has that been put in there, and like I don't know, you have to sort of read between the lines a little bit with that kind of literature, I think. But I personally really enjoyed it, and I liked the ending as well. Sometimes I find that these little stories where nothing really much happens is when I take something really meaningful away from it, and I think that was the case with this book. Just these little snippets of their life together I found to be really meaningful. I don't know why. So yeah, that's why I rated it 4 stars. The next 4-star book was Luca and the Fire of Life by Salman Rushdie, and I nearly rated this down. I nearly rated this 3 stars, but I think had I read it at another time, when I wasn't feeling a bit crap about my reading, I would have rated it higher, if that makes sense. I think just because I wasn't in the mood, because it's more of a middle grade book, and I wasn't really in the mood at the time to read that sort of thing, so I think that's why I didn't give it like a 5-star. So Luca and the Fire of Life is a sequel, kind of, to Haroun and the Sea of Stories, also by Salman Rushdie. So he wrote this adventure story, which is also kind of middle grade, for his older son when he was younger, and now he's had another son who's just turning 7 or something like that. He's written this other book, which is for him. So the story follows Haroun's younger brother, Luca, who has to go on his own adventure, I think to save his father. But it goes into this, he travels into this like fantastical world, this different realm, where he meets loads of interesting creatures and goes on this pretty cool adventure. And you can see, it's quite interesting actually, because you can see the difference in time. I think when I read Haroun and the Sea of Stories, it didn't have this sort of, he's clearly referencing stuff that his kids like, so they have a life counter in this book, which is very much like video game style, you know, and that wasn't in Haroun and the Sea of Stories. So I think he's taken elements of like references that he knows his children like and tried to put it into a like one story, which I thought was really sweet actually. Luca and the Fire of Life was really good. I really enjoyed it, but it is middle grade, and at the time I just didn't feel like reading it. And I read Haroun and the Sea of Stories probably at a point where I was at the age where I would appreciate it more. I probably wasn't a middle grade reader, I think I was probably a teenager more, but I really enjoyed it more from a younger point of view than I do now in my 30s, I think. I don't know, maybe I'm just not suited anymore to reading middle grade, because it's the first middle grade book I've read in a while. So But I still gave it 4 stars because I can appreciate that it was a really good story, and I can see why people would enjoy it. Okay, the next book that I gave 4 stars was To All the People I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. This is part of a 3-part series, I think. I loved this book. It kind of like, some of the books that I read this month were young adult, and I haven't read young adult for a long time, and it kind of brought me back to when I was a teenager, and I'd like come home and read these sorts of, like, I find them easy read stories. To All the Boys I Loved Before was definitely, like, to me, an easy read, and I absolutely fucking loved it. Like, I love the family. So basically it's about a girl called, I can't remember what she's called, Jenny May or something like that, or Jenny Lee or something, I can't remember. She basically has loved like a certain number of boys since I think she's like probably 17 in this story, or like 16, 17, I'm not sure. She writes these letters to these boys who she's loved, and some of them are like, why I don't love you anymore, or why I still love you, know, stuff like that. And they get sent out to the boys, and it's just about what happens as a result of that. And obviously there's like a love interest and all this crap, and it's also about her 2 sisters, and their family dynamic and like the relationship that they have, and I just loved it. It reminded me of like a modern, non-pukey Little Women kind of do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, watching that like dynamic of the family, you really like get attached to them, and I really enjoyed it. Book that I gave 4 stars was Blood Red Road by Moira Young. Again, part of a 3-part series, I think like the Wastelands series or something like that, or like, I can't remember what it's called. And that follows the story of, God, what's she called? Lou and Saba. Could not remember her name. Lou and like Saba, I think she's called. They're twins, and their younger sister, and basically it's kind of a dystopian novel, like civilization's fallen apart and we're living in like the desert and just surviving, and basically Lou gets kidnapped by like some random people, and Saba feels like, because obviously they're twins and there's a bit of a mystical element there, they've got like a connection, and she basically goes on a travel to like get him back, and it's about the people she meets. She takes her sister with her, what happens to them, whether they save him, and they end up meeting loads of different people, and there's kind of like a fantastical element, because it's alluded to that there's some sort of like prophecy, like not prophecy, but there's some sort of thing surrounding her and her brother, and it was so good. I think I read it in one day. I literally just sat down and I was like reading. It was really good. I think I stayed up all night like reading it. It kind of reminded me of like a cowboy type story, because there's a lot of time where she's like traveling across the desert, and I really enjoyed that. And they've got like bows, they don't have like guns really, they shoot with like bows and arrows and stuff, so it was like really like tribal, and like, I don't know, I really enjoyed it. And at the moment I'm actually reading, I've just finished, but it will be in my May wrap up, the 2nd book to that series, and I enjoy that much less, and I'll talk more about that in my May wrap up, but I don't think I'll be rating that one nearly as highly as I have this one, unfortunately. Okay, and the next book that I gave 4 stars, which again could be a 5-star, is kind of difficult to decide like where it sits, is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. I think it's Shay Earnshaw, I think that's how you say it. And that is basically about a town where years and years ago there were these witches who were drowned, and it's about the sort of like curse kind of thing that befalls the town as a result of this drowning. Year after year after year the same curse is like activated, and it's about what happens as a result of this, and it follows one character and her relationship with other people while this curse is going on, and how the townspeople react to it. It was so good, and I haven't read a good like kind of not fairy tale, but like witchy fantastical mystery book for ages, and like, oh my god, it was so fucking good. I really enjoyed it, and I've just given it to my mum to read, and I was like, you have to read this, and she doesn't always read the stuff that I recommend to her, and I really want her to read it because I'm like, someone has to read this because it's so good. I want someone else to talk to about it. The only reason I didn't give it 5 stars was because there is a bit of a plot twist in the story, and I kind of called it from the beginning of the book. I already knew what was going to happen, and I think like luckily it didn't ruin this story for me, but I think that can ruin a story if the plot is so predictable that you already know exactly what is going to happen. And I don't think I'm alone here with this particular book. I think a lot of people who have read it probably saw that coming, and that to me made me rate it lower. But the writing itself and the characters are amazing, and it's so quaint and like, I don't know, it's really cute, and I really loved it. And I feel like it should have been longer than it was. Like, there are elements in the book that are spoken about that aren't really broached again. Like, it talks about the village, and one of the her best friend's mother has like a cake shop where she like kind of performs magic. Like, she puts different ingredients in the cakes to like achieve a certain result, like forgetful cakes and things like that, and that was only briefly alluded to. And I kind of think like we should have had more where like we were told more about the town and the people in it, and I just feel like it would have been really interesting to see that element a bit more as well, but then it would have been really long and it might have ruined it, I don't know. Okay, we're now on to the 5-star books, which there are 3 of, and the first one that I want to talk about is another book by Matt Haig. I mentioned it earlier, and that is The Humans. This book was fucking amazing. It was so funny, and I started reading this a while ago and put it down and changed my mind, and I didn't enjoy it, and I think that's because I didn't really understand the premise, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And then my mum read it and she explained it to me, and she said, no, it's really good, carry on with it. And I absolutely loved it. It was very heartwarming but funny at the same time, and it's basically about a guy, I can't remember the character's name off the top of my head, and he has created a like mathematical solution that's going to like really advance the population. And these like alien people don't think that humanity is ready for this and that it will like destroy them. So this character, is he called Andrew or Arthur or something like that? He gets taken over by an alien, and the idea is that the alien has to like kill him and like assassinate everybody who knows anything about this formula, to save humanity basically, and it's about how he inhabits a human for the first time, and he learns about our culture and our way of being and like who we are. You know, he arrives in this body, he doesn't know the language, he thinks we're all ugly, and he finds like the food really weird and the air really weird, and it's just, yeah, it's really funny. When he arrives, it's hilarious, like walking around trying to figure out where he is, and like there's a particular funny scene where he picks up like a cosmopolitan and like is reading about orgasms and then thinks that's like really important, and it just like it carries on, and these are then referenced throughout the book, and it's just so funny. And it's also very serious. Like there are some really serious moments about you know, he inhabits the body of someone who was very dedicated to his work and probably didn't have much time for his family life, and it talks a lot about the family of the body he's inhabited and their relationship, and how he learns about the different emotions of humans and the way we live, and the connections that we have with people and the significance of those connections. Okay, apologies guys, the camera died, so I had to charge the battery, and now I need to be at a weird different angle, but we're just gonna have to deal with that. So the next book that I read that I gave 5 stars that I'll put up here is The Smell of Other People's Houses by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. I absolutely love this book. It follows the story of a group of people. I think they're spread over Alaska because it goes to like different towns, but it's predominantly following the lives of a group of young people and their family in this little town village in Alaska, and basically how their lives intertwine and connect in different ways, and it tells the story from different perspectives. Like each chapter looks at each of the different characters and switches between them, and it's interesting to see how something that might be really significant to them in their lives at that current moment in time, from the perspective of one of their friends or like somebody else within the village, they might think that it's inconsequential, and it's just interesting to like play them off of one another and see how everyone's connected and all their like relationships are connected, and they eventually like it all merges together and it all makes sense. But yeah, it's a really good book. I read it based on Natasha's My Reading is Odd channel. She recommended it on her channel, and the cover looked really good, and I didn't actually realise that it was about what it was about. Looking at the cover, you kind of like assume it's going to be about something different. I then saw like other people on YouTube recommending it, and I thought, I really want to read this. Actually, I kind of want to read most of the books that I see recommended on Natasha's channel, so I've got like a huge list of books that I want to read, and then I saw this one in the library and I was like, oh yes, that book, I want to read it, I'm grabbing it. I didn't realise it was young adult either, so that was quite interesting. But yeah, it was I read it at a time when I was in a real like reading slump, and it kind of helped me to get out of my slump. It was kind of refreshing for me to read like a young adult that was the sort of topics I would have read as a teenager. It really like made me like reminisce and think about the sort of books that I enjoyed reading when I was younger, and I read a lot of young adult then. So it was a good like reintroduction into the realm of young adult fiction, because I haven't read young adult for a while, so that was a really good like opener into that area, of which I'm going to read more. And finally, the last book that I gave 5 stars, that I will put up here because I read it on the Libby app, is Sky Song by, who wrote it? Abby Elphinstone, I think. I believe it's a middle grade book, but please correct me on that if I'm wrong, because I was not sure. And it follows the story of 2 young people and like the people around them. I don't know how much I can reveal about this because I can't remember what is on the blurb. So basically, it's a city, it's like a fantasy, it's not a fantasy, kind of a fantasy story, not really. There are 3 different tribes living on in this world, and basically there's like this ice queen, and she wants to like take over the world, and there are 2 people. One is a girl that we don't know much about that the ice queen's captured, and one is a, oh god, that looks so sort. One is a boy from one of the tribes, and it's about the adventure that they go on and the people that help them to try and stop this ice queen who wants to like become all powerful. Really enjoyed it. It really reminded me of the sorts of books I read when I was a lot younger, like Narnia, you know, and things like that. And it was so well written. There wasn't really like a part where I wasn't interested, and for a middle grade book it read well. Like it dealt with some like really nice topics of like friendship, you know, moral decisions that you have to make and things like that. It kind of like, it's those sort of books you read when you're younger where you like wish you were there, like you wish the world existed and you're like, oh, it's so good, I want to be part of it. And that's how I know that like I've really enjoyed a, you know, young adult or middle grade book of that kind, when I sort of think, oh, you know, I wish like this world existed and I could like hang out with these people and that sort of thing. Definitely recommend reading that. So yeah, that's all the books I read in April, guys. Let me know if you've read any of them and what you thought of them. I think a lot of Matt Haig books are like circulating around BookTube right now. A lot of the people that I follow are reading Matt Haig books. And The Wicked Deep seems to be really popular on BookTube right now. And I think quite a few people are going to be reading it and raving about it because it is a really good book. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed those or if any of them are on your TBR that you have been meaning to get to. And I will see you guys in my, well, I haven't put up a May TBR yet, so I'll see you in the May TBR. And then I'm also going to put my March wrap up as well, because I still haven't put that up. That might already be up by the time this video comes up. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next video.